Okay, so question 12. Write down the area of a circle as a function of its perimeter. So this seems kind of tricky because there's a lot going on. So let's first write down the area of a circle, that equation, and the perimeter of a circle. So area of a circle is pi r squared, right? And meanwhile, the perimeter of a circle, another word for that is circumference, is p equals 2 pi r. That's where we're at. So let's read the question one more time. It says write down the area of a circle as a function of its perimeter, suggesting when you have f at x equals blah, 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 which part is the input, which is the output, and which is the function name. Well, this is kind of suggesting that the area of a circle, that part is like the function name / the output. Meanwhile, of its perimeter, that perimeter is what? The perimeter is the input. It's our like new x. It's okay. So we have a function name or the output, and we have the perimeter as the input. So when we look at these two equations for a second, that means I have to try to combine these two. When I'm trying to combine these two, that means I have to see what are the similarities. Okay, I can't force it upon each other, but is there anything in common? Well, between the two, what letters appear in both equations? You see that there's an R there and an R there. So now you need to determine, okay, am I going to get R by itself within here or R by itself in there? Well, at the end of the day, you want a certain equation, and you don't want an equation in terms of perimeter, but you have, you're talking about the area equation at the end. So due to this, that means I want to get R by itself for this one. Why is that? Let me try to show you. So algebraically, I am going to divide both sides by 2p. And so R is equal to p divided by 2 pi. Correct? So now that I have that, well, remember, my function name or the total output, what I am writing my function as is area. And so I'm going to plug this into this equation. So I'm going to write down the step of, okay, first what I had to do was isolate for R in the perimeter equation. In the perimeter formula. That was my first step. Step 2 is going to be sub R into a equation. That's my second step. So as a result, I will get A equals pi bracket P divided by 2 pi bracket squared. So this was the hard part, and this was the prior hard part because you had to figure out the initial setup, right? And we had to be like, okay, well, if my formula, my function is going to be something, my main equation is area, that means I should really be plugging in the stuff in here back into here so that I have an area equation in terms of P. Okay? And so I was using the fact that I saw radius in both equations. Okay, now I can move on to the second step. So right now I have this equation, but things can be simplified, right? So I'm gonna try to simplify. Okay, so what is that gonna look like? Well, you need to do BEDMAS, right? And that means that you are going to do the P divided by 2 pi. You're going to imply that. So that 2 as the exponent is going to apply to each part. Each part according to exponent laws. That means as my next step, I have pi bracket p squared divided by 2 squared times pi squared. Okay, we're almost done, getting there. So reminder that when you have like a pi over there and a pi squared, that's the same thing as writing pi divided by pi times pi, which means that these can actually cancel out, and that is 1 over pi. So let's look at this for a second. We have A equals pi bracket p squared divided by 2 squared is equal to 4 pi squared, like that. That means I can simplify this Here, let me just simplify it over there. And so I got rid of that pi, and I only have this pi here. And this is based on the fact that pi divided by pi squared is in fact 1 divided by pi. So if I have this, do I really need the brackets? Not really. So I can get rid of those brackets. So I have a equals p squared divided by 4 pi. Am I done? So if you look at my steps prior, it says you have to first isolate the output, and I did that, but I have not yet replaced it with the function notation. So I'm just going to show you that, okay, I have isolated the output. I need to write it in function notation. Function notation. Okay, so now you need to consider, well, what was my function name? What is my function about? And then what is the input that I'm putting in? So remember, when you look at the original question, it says, write down the area of a circle as a function of its perimeter. So we identified that we wanted a function a in terms of p. So that's how you're going to do that. So it's not as simple as y equals f at x. We have to kind of interpret what it means when it's like a word problem or a scenario problem. And so we have a bracket p equals p squared over 4 pi. All right, and just so that you're not confused, I'm going to put that on the side, and I'll just put that as side note so that this is what we have as our answer. So that was our first step, moving along, etc., etc. Okay?